On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with commonsku CEO Mark Graham about tips for entrepreneurs and how to build a business for the long term. Welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and joining me today is a rock star. He's the co-founder and chief platform officer of commonsku, Mark Graham. Thanks for joining me again.
Well, thank you. I'm not so sure about the rock star, but I'll take it. Maybe you're the only person who calls me that. Certainly not my wife, Catherine, but...
I get it. Yeah. No, I certainly, definitely a rock star. But one of the things I know about you, Mark, is you and I are both fans of kind of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs. And if you're like me, people who are thinking about starting businesses and young entrepreneurs often ask me for advice. So what advice do you give new entrepreneurs who are getting ready to launch a new business?
I would crystallize it into three things.
Okay.
I mean, no one's going to listen to any more than three things that I have to say, so let's just keep it to three.
Okay.
Number one is having a strong understanding of your target audience. So who is that customer that you will ultimately sell to once you have set up shop in whatever business, whether it's promotional products business or any business out there.
Mm-hmm.
Have a deep and intimate understanding of who that customer is, understand their world, understand their problems, understand what success looks like to them. If you don't understand that, then you're going to spend a lot more time fumbling around once you've launched that business, and that'll be very expensive for you.
Yeah.
Number two is I think it's really important to understand what makes you different. So the world has a lot of Me Too businesses out there. There's nothing wrong with that, but the chances of success for a Me Too business versus a business that's truly unique and stands out amongst all the competition is a business that will have a greater chance of success. So understand quickly what makes you different from the competition. I know it sounds obvious, but I think a lot of people don't really understand that when they get in. So that's all about doing market research in advance, understanding who the players are, understanding where they're strong, because believe me, they will have strengths. And the good news is they will have weaknesses as well. And if you can fit yourself into that matrix, then you'll have a much greater chance of success. And the third thing is, I think, probably the hardest of all, but is setting your expectations that the odds of failure are going to be very high, and that you likely won't be receiving a paycheck for at least 1 to 2 years. So every business is different. So some people may launch a business and they may be profitable within month one. And if that's the case, then they need to be on this podcast, not me. And in some cases, it may take longer than 2 years. But in my experience, and having been an entrepreneur for some time now and started a number of businesses, you usually don't see any kind of financial success for at least 1 to 2 years. You may be scraping by in ramen noodles for that period of time and paying yourself a little bit, but certainly don't think that you're getting into business to make a lot of money in that first period of time. And that's why so many businesses fail, because after 6 months, the owner is like, I can't make a go of this. I'm not making the money I want to, so I'm going to close the doors. And I think that I understand that, but if they'd set their expectations that it might be 1 or 2 years till they make money, then I'd think that fewer businesses would close.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think sometimes whether you're an entrepreneur or you're going into sales to a degree, I think that first year or two, it really just figuring it out.
Yeah.
That's really good advice, Mark. So like a lot of businesses, I know hopefully we evolve, right? And so one of the things I was thinking about you with commonsku, what are some new, say in the last 6 months, marketing ideas that you're using to promote your business that might be helpful for others to implement or to consider?
If it's okay, I think I might answer that question around things that we have done from the beginning, but have seen in the last 6 months really bear fruit.
Oh, okay,
so If I can be a troublemaker, I might answer the question that way, but I still think it'll give you what you're looking for. So when we first launched the company, we realized that there would be a strong advantage to us if we focused on education and community building as being core parts of the product. And so we recognized that while we were starting the business, we were writing software to help distributors run their business. We recognized that that was kind of one component of it. And a very important component, because that's what people are buying when they're buying common SKU. But we also recognized there was an opportunity to build in this education and community component to it to really make the users of the platform feel successful and connected to one another. And there was a lot of debate at the beginning about how we would do that. And because it took a lot of extra time to build the product, and this is where I bring it up to the last 6 months, is that we've really seen that since we launched Common SKU a couple of years ago, that it's been in the last 6 to 12 months that we've really started to see the benefits of that approach. So that approach to investing in education, investing in community building, investing in making users feel successful is definitely not a short-term play. But since we've been in the business now for several years, we've seen things like our conference brand. So we built something called SKUCon, which I'm wearing the shirt right here, coincidentally here today. And we've had a couple of SKUCons already. We're having our third one in Chicago in a few weeks. And what we found to be really special with this particular product is it brings people together so they can be educated, connected, and inspired. And it's not a moneymaker for us whatsoever. It's a ton of work. And some people could say it's a huge distraction from the art of building software. And I have always disagreed with that. And it's something that when you invest in making people feel special and successful, then it can do wonderful things for your brand. And I think it takes some patience and some fortitude because you don't see the return immediately.
Yeah, I think, it's so funny, Mark, and I think you and I are like-minded in this way. I tell people all the time, look, I'm trying to build a 20-year business. I'm not looking for one transaction. I'm looking for a customer that's a friend for life. And so those sort of things, you end up taking short-term losses sometimes in order to do that. And so that's super interesting. And it also leads me to my final question too, because you talked about the connection, and it's actually one of the things I always say about you, is that you're a connector. I mean that in the most complimentary possible way, and I think there's a ton of power in being a connector. Do you do that on purpose? Is that an intentional thing? And if so, where did you learn that from?
It's a good question. I think I do it on purpose only because it feels natural to me.
Okay.
But let me tell you where I got it from, because I think that's really where your question was. And I have to, so I'm gonna give a shout out to my dad, but I also want to give a shout out to my mom as well, because my parents have played a big role, and I know that your parents are also really important to you as well, so you'll identify with this. So I was actually writing some notes to the response to this answer. So my mother, I've got my notes here. My mother taught me to be competitive and to be very curious. So I ask lots and lots of questions, and that's because of my mom, Shannon Graham. So thank you for that. With regard to my father, my father taught me to be a lifelong learner and to be a connector. And what's interesting about that is my dad is the furthest thing away from a promotional products professional. He's a physician, a cardiologist here in Toronto. He's turning 75 this year, and he still goes into the hospital each and every day and just loves what it is that he does. And what he taught me was that that it's okay to break outside of the four walls of your profession. And so in his particular case, he's a cardiologist and could have showed up every day and helped cure people from heart disease, right? And that in and of itself is a pretty cool mission. But what he did and built into his career was this lifelong commitment to philanthropy, to learning, to evangelizing concepts. So in his particular case, he's very, very passionate about anti-smoking and CPR, and brought all of these communities and people together to communicate this message. And that, to me, is breaking outside the four walls of your conventional job. And he was like that always. And so growing up in a household with two parents like that were encouraging me to be curious and to be competitive and also to be connectors and also to be passionate about things beyond the four walls of your work, I think have translated into what it is that I do right now. And I'll say that I'm very honored that you say that about me, but there's no question that I have learned from the foot of a master. And so that's why I say I do it on purpose, because it feels natural. I don't do it on purpose because it's contrived, or I hope it's never perceived that way.
Right.
And I think when you do something that is natural, then it just, I don't know what I mean, it just comes across as something that's genuine. And I think if people trust you and they feel that you're the real deal, then that's good for business. I think it's also good for life as well.
Yeah.
And I think in closing, I said it in my earlier answer, that we have seen direct business results when we make people feel successful and valued.
Sure.
And that sounds like a cool tagline. I just kind of made that up. But when you put the customers and you put your partners first and make them successful, then success for you follows down the line. But it's always for you after the fact, right? And that's why I talk about building this long-term brand as opposed to building something that's short-term. If you're putting yourself before your customers or before other people, yeah, you may make a quick buck at the beginning, but I don't think you're really going to build a sustainable business. So I learned that from him.
Yeah, it goes back to, you and I have talked about it, give first, the give first economy that I think that we are in. And so that's a fantastic answer. You've answered my 3 questions. I give everybody a chance to ask me one question. So I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
So you wrote a guest post on the Common Ski blog a little while ago, and something that really touched me. And it was about your hardest day as an entrepreneur. And you wrote in this post, I think it was maybe about 10 years ago, how you were asked by some friends to go into a football pool or a hockey pool or something like that, and it was only $100, and or at least it was only $100 for them, but for you it could have been $1 million, and you were flat broke, and the business was on the rocks, or you were just in the beginning stages of the business, and times were tough. And I want you to tell me about that moment, just quickly recap that, and I want you to tell me how it is that you persevered to get out of the muck to where you're at right now. Because a lot of people wouldn't survive that. And I want to know what it took for you to get beyond the crap so that you could put yourself on a path to success.
Yeah, no, it's that's a great question. It's actually it's funny. I wrote that blog for you, and it was still tough to this day to write that.
Yeah.
To relive it. Yeah, it was a really tough day, and it was the day that it was a March Madness pool, which is basketball, and yeah, they wanted, and my oldest daughter, at the time, was begging my wife to say, "Hey, it's fine. We can give Daddy the money. He could win. He's good at basketball," because she didn't understand the concept. And I remember it just being crummy. But I think that, the thing that I had going for me is the thing that, like, with my daughter and with my wife and the family, having a support team around you that kind of believes in you, even when you're not so sure you believe in yourself, is super valuable. Having that around you is, because one of my, I think I've said this to you too, as one of my favorite things about entrepreneurship, or one of the things I've read, is they say that an entrepreneur is like a guy riding a giant lion, and everybody looks at him and says, "Oh my gosh, look at that guy riding the lion!" And the entrepreneur is like, "How did I get on this lion? And how do I get off without getting eaten?" And so I think that having that team around you and that believes in you is just, it's wildly valuable. And then the other piece is, I think, you appreciate this too, is that there are seasons within any entrepreneur. There are times where you are going to be really cash tight, and then there'll be times where you're king of the world. And I think not allowing yourself to get too high in those success moments and too low in the the moments, and knowing that regardless of good or bad, this too shall pass, and just putting one foot in front of the other it's easy to want to quit. So getting through that is, once you do it, I think you do feel really good about making it through that tough time. And I think almost every entrepreneur, every successful entrepreneur has that story, right? The story where you're like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine it getting any worse. So it's I appreciate the question. It's a tough one for sure.
Well, you wrote a post recently on running, I remember, and one of your points was that the first mile is always the hardest, and that if you're running a marathon, then the latter 25 miles are easier than that first mile, and I think there's some truth to that. And so I see a big parallel between your story. I mean, you're just starting off in the business 10 years ago, and times were tight, that you could have given up, and a lot of people do. And I think having the fortitude to just get beyond it has set you up for some great success today. So thank you for that post and that honest answer.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, hey, this has been great. That's going to wrap up another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching, but wait, can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe.